Disclaimer, everyone, we are in fact wearing wigs. Why, do you ask? Because it is a Halloween-themed podcast. Is this a fashion statement? Maybe. Is it a cry for help? Probably, after you get done reading these cases. Will it improve the quality of this podcast? Highly unlikely. But we think we look fun, and that's what matters. So please adjust your expectations accordingly.
I would also like to add that no unicorns were harmed in the making of these wigs. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of our podcast, Absence-Minded.
Oh my gosh. We're fully prepared for the day.
I'm coming to you with a fully absence-minded brain today. I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Christine Hinrichs. And today we're having a special session. I don't know if you can tell, but we look slightly different.
Mm-hmm.
We are coming to you in the spirit of Halloween. And not only did we dress up and bedazzle ourselves a little bit to make today's session a little more spooky for you all, but we are also planning to share with you some of the creepiest, crawliest, ickiest FMLA and ADA case law that has crossed our paths in the past few years. And so we are doing that today in the spirit of giving you a positively ghoulish podcast episode.
I love it. All right, so we've got three. We've got three to cover today. The first one I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about. It is a recent decision. It came out in 2024 from the Sixth Circuit. So I'm always kind of interested in digging into what states are in each circuit. I haven't been able to memorize it just yet. But in the Sixth Circuit, we're looking at Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, and Tennessee. And for this particular case, it's Chapman versus Brettlinger Enterprises. It is a case that really throws the in loco parentis argument under FMLA as a covered relationship upside down. Some people may say it's spooky, if you will. So this is a situation where we have an employee who needed to take leave for their adult sister who was terminally ill with cancer. This employee, as one does, initially used PTO to take care of her sister. The PTO ran out. The employee requested FMLA. The employer said, no, we don't cover siblings, or FMLA does not cover siblings, and they denied it. The employee had some attendance issues related to the sister's care and eventually ended up being terminated. So here's where it's get fun. Again, as one does, the plaintiff, or our employee in this case, filed FMLA interference and retaliation. So initially we have a district court that said they granted summary judgment in favor of the employer, saying that, hey, in loco parentis does not exist because the sister's disability nor the parent-child relationship occurred before the sister was 18 years old. The Sixth Circuit came in and said, not so fast. An in loco parentis relationship can actually be established between adults. So this is a case that, typically when we are evaluating that relationship, we're looking to see if that relationship happened before the age of 18. This is a case of saying, again, this relationship can form between adults. So if you are in the Sixth Circuit, so if you're in Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, or Tennessee, you're an employer in those states, you are going to want to take this into consideration if you have an employee who's requesting FMLA for a relationship that may fit under the in loco parentis criteria. So keep that in mind. That's scary case number one.
Scary, but here's what I would like to add to this for the record. Anyone that knows me knows that I just really like to be right. And there's not a hill small enough that I won't die on. And I will say that when I was a practicing leave and disability program manager on the employer side, I had an instance in 2010, and I know exactly when it was because I do categorically log all of the times that I'm right, where an employee of my organization came to me requesting FMLA leave to care for her adult sibling who had Down syndrome, and her parents were ailing, and the parents who had previously been the primary caregivers to her brother could no longer care for her brother, really, because they were aging. And she requested FMLA leave to care for her brother. And I, having to put up a bit of a battle over it, did ultimately grant FMLA leave to this employee. So in my mind, and based on guidance I've given in the past, this is a foregone conclusion. But I do always appreciate a good case law example to be able to point to when we're kind of dealing with some of these murkier FMLA issues.
Brycie, I have a question to pivot. Can you pull up this log that you keep to see how many times you have been right versus how many times I have been right?
I would, but you're not looking good on the log. So I do want to preserve your dignity in that way.
All right. Scary case number 2.
Scary case number 2 is Menninger versus PPD Development LP. So just to lay the stage for you, Miss Menninger was a long-term, high-level, and highly compensated employee of PPD Development, which is a major pharmaceutical research company. She had a long history of high performance, and again, had been with the company for some time, and had previously disclosed to her employer a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder. Now, I don't know what kind of brouhaha went down, but something internally, some sort of scuttlebutt occurred. And what resulted was that the company suddenly restructured her role, kind of requiring more client-facing and social interaction. So that resulted in requirements for more meetings, more presentations, more travel, a lot more client-facing interaction. As a result of this, the employee requested a set of accommodations related to her generalized anxiety disorder. She asked them to reduce her presentation load. She asked for more remote client engagements or different kind of internal role configurations so that she could continue to perform well in her role. While the employer granted her some of the accommodations she requested, they refused most of them and ultimately ended up terminating this employee. And this case made it all the way to federal court, a jury trial, and the employer, of course, lost. The really spooky, terrifying thing about this case is this judgment, this jury award, which was not in any way like a class action. This is, again, one employee, one organization as the defendant. The award was $24 million.
We could buy so many wigs with that amount.
Yeah. So I do also want to say, before I get into why this payout was so high, that the employer did fight that amount in court, and ultimately it was upheld. So not only did they get slammed by this jury, but the court ultimately decided months later that it was a fair payout. So why was the payout so high? I can just say that first, I want to give you kind of the breakout of where this money went. So the economic damages, the money that went straight to this employee for lost wages was about $1 million, $1.5 million. The emotional distress that was assessed was $3 to $4 million. The rest of this, which is somewhere between 18 and $20 million, was punitive damages that the jury assessed to the employer. So they, literally gave this employer the smackdown. They did that intentionally to send a message to this, large employer who had plenty of resources at their disposal that they felt engaged in egregious activity that violated the ADA. And so this is just I think there's a lot of messages to be taken from this. I don't think it's probably a good idea to conveniently change an employee's job role if you're looking to help that employee exit your organization, first and foremost. Second of all, if you're going to do it, do not do it in Massachusetts, because in Massachusetts and some other states, there is no cap on the amount of emotional and punitive damages that can be assessed to an employer. And, also just another really good call out to make sure that we're engaging in the interactive process. This jury did not find that this employer was engaging in the interactive process. And so again, like they made it a point to punish this employer, and they surely did.
That is a scary one. I like it. All right, let's end things on a low note. Honestly, this is kind of a depressing conversation. We're gonna have to work something in towards the end here. So
That's why our wigs are happy.
I know, right? They're gonna bring you joy, even if these cases don't. So this last case is pretty new. It's out of 2025, and honestly, it gives me a little bit of a headache, like even more than this wig cap does. So this is about medical certifications and really has made me evaluate some of the advisement that I give when evaluating some detail within medical certifications for some of our clients. So this is Davis versus Illinois Department of Human Services. This is a situation an employee is working. She was at an assisted living facility, again, run by the state of Illinois. She became pregnant. She requested FMLA for her pregnancy. What she had said, due to morning sickness, had the medical certification completed. The employee's physician outlined during the medical certification, again, confirming the condition was pregnancy, but made no mention of morning sickness. The medical certification stated that the employee needed leave for biweekly appointments, so something that would be planned, and then weekly appointments in the month leading up to the childbirth, and then potentially 6 or 8 weeks post-birth. No mention of flare-ups. The physician actually said there will be no flare-ups. They said no to the question, will the condition cause episodic flare-ups periodically preventing the employee from performing the job functions. So what happens? The employee leaves work early due to morning sickness, and the employer denies that employee's time off. The Department of Health Services, they also did not give the opportunity to the employee to recertify or clarify that certification, giving the employee the opportunity to maybe say, hey, I actually do need intermittent or episodic flare-up appointments related to morning sickness. So where this is a little tricky for us employers, and Brycie and I decided to call this out as a scary case, is we typically tell you to follow the detail given to you in the medical certification form. So if the medical certification form outlines an employee needs off work for physical therapy for their back, they get physical therapy for their back. They're not necessarily going to have coverage for an episodic flare-up of the back if that is not outlined within the medical certification. So what happened in this case is that the court said medical certifications are a guiding document for an employee's leave expectation, and that employers should follow up with the employee's provider if the employee's symptoms are inconsistent with the content of their medical certification, or if there's doubt about the stated leave reason or duration of the employee's leave. This is a little hard because this is just not the type of advisement or guidance that we've gotten from courts in the past when an employee needs to take leave for a condition that isn't outlined within the medical certification form. This is what is so scary about this. But one of my thoughts are, and maybe why this case had a little bit more leniency to it, is because it's pregnancy. And morning sickness is something that almost always, or in many pregnancy, comes along. And so for the employer to just unequivocally deny that episodic flare-up for morning sickness, again, without giving the employee the opportunity to recertify or provide clarification that this might be needed, I think that's really the issue there. What's so hard is I just talked about a case last week where an employee had intermittent FMLA for diabetes, and The certification said that the employee could take time off for hypoglycemia, but the employee ended up taking time off for neuropathy, which are both diabetes-related conditions. The employer denied the time off for neuropathy because it wasn't outlined in the medical certification. And in that case, the employer won. So that's a different situation than what we're talking about here that makes it so challenging. But I'm really looking at this through the lens of pregnancy. And that's why we should be a little bit more flexible in absences that might occur related to that. What do you think, Brycie?
Yeah, I think the maybe bigger overarching message, without me thinking we have to treat pregnancy as a special serious health condition, which I like to think we can create them all equal. But I think the overarching theme for me is, or takeaway for me on this one, is that we have a process that the Department of Labor gives us when it comes to curing a deficiency, like on an FMLA form, for example. But I think in the spirit of what they're trying to tell us there, and clearly in the guidance of this case, is not to maybe perform an outright denial, but follow the process we have for going back and asking for recertification or asking for clarity through an employee from their healthcare provider. So I think it's just like use the options that the FMLA regulations clearly give to us to try to clear up any misunderstandings before engaging in like outright denial of FMLA time.
Well, that's our 3 scary ones. We did it. And as a special Halloween broadcast, we made it less than 32 minutes or 27 minutes. For which
we're trying to shorten these up for you based on feedback received that not everybody wants 60 minutes of hardcore FMLA and ADA content.
I mean, Brycie and I will continue this conversation off camera.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Thanks, everyone.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
The information provided in this podcast is for general information and education purposes only. It's not intended to be and should not be construed as legal, financial, or human resources advice. While we strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, laws and policies regarding leave management vary by jurisdiction and may change over time. Listeners should consult with a qualified attorney, HR professional, or relevant expert for advice specific to their situation. The views and opinions expressed by the hosts and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of their employers or any affiliated organizations.